Welcome to Instant Impact Events. I'm CJ Williams.
And I'm Cheryl Williams. And welcome, guys. We've got another exciting topic to bring you today.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, we have lots of topics that we want to talk about. But we want to make sure that we're always making each episode kind of like bite-sized, not too long, not too short.
Staying on track.
And just giving you a piece of information to be able to take this week and some more knowledge and information to be able to glean from that. And so what we're going to talk about today, our topic is event size and event space. Like, how do you know how much space you need, what kind of space you need?
So all kinds of different layouts.
Right, and so we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit more, so we can all have a good understanding of kind of where do you go, what do you look for, what are you doing? So
how much room you actually need.
Yeah, and there's a lot that comes into play when you're thinking about space, right? Depending on the type of an event, depending on the layout, depending on
how many people
you're going to have, depending on if you're going to have a main room and other rooms, if you're going to have, a trade show versus, a sit-down event. It's all different. And so when you're talking about events, the one thing I have on my notes here is the first and foremost, you got to figure out what type of, are you doing an indoor or an outdoor event, right?
Yeah. What are you going to do? Or both?
Space is space, right?
Yes.
Whether it's indoor space, a lot of people think about events like, oh, it's a ballroom, it's a trade show space, but it's not. There's events outside as well. And so you have to figure out, okay, is this an indoor event or is this an outdoor event or is it a combo? Are we having some indoors, some outdoors?
Yes.
I mean, sometimes you can have really nice lunches outside or, cocktail hours. There's all kinds of fun things that you can do outside if you're doing that type of event. Now, sometimes, rallies and trade shows and other things, festivals, a lot of those can all be outside too. So again,
and that's still an event.
And that's what we talked about last week, is knowing what type of events you're wanting to put on, because it's kind of it's like a stair-step approach, right? We got, okay, what kind of events are we wanting to do? Okay, now what kind of space are we doing? It's kind of, we're working our way there.
You have to ask those questions.
And yet you got to get clear on, what type of events are you doing? And now, okay, this particular event that you're looking at right here, what kind of event is this? Because even when you have your niche that you're working on or your specific area of expertise, there's still different events even amongst that, right? Different layouts, different locations, different atmospheres, environments. So all those things change. So first and foremost, this event that you're working on right now, is it indoor or outdoor? And then once you've got that, it's like, okay, now we can move forward in a certain direction. Because if you're looking for indoor space, it's going to be a totally different thing than if you're looking for outdoor space most of the time. And sometimes you might be doing both.
Outdoor space.
It can be, especially depending on how much space you're needing. Are you really wanting like really outdoors with no structures around?
Yeah. Do you want a tent?
Right. So all these types of things are all things I have to think about. Now, the next thing is, okay, now that we've established indoor, outdoor, what type of event are you having so that you know what type of space that you're needing when you go to look at? Is it a gala? Is it a conference? Is it a party? Is it a seminar? Is it a workshop? Is it an expo? Is it a trade show? Is it a wedding?
Breakout rooms. Do you need multiple rooms?
Right.
Yes.
And so, you have to figure out, once you know, okay, here's the event that I'm having, right?
Yep.
Here's what I'm looking for. Then we can start diving in more of, okay, this is more of the space that I'm needing, right? So when you go and talk to venues or you're looking for space and you're searching, because these are all questions that are going to need to get answered anyway. So the more that you can answer these on the front end, the better, right?
Yes, less surprises also.
Yeah. Then the next thing is about how many people are going to be at this event. Now, normally you don't have an exact number when you're starting out, but you have a good
understanding,
approximate, a good estimate. Are we talking about 5,000 people, 500, or 50, right? Because that, again, changes the type of space that you're going to need. It also changes the type of space that is available to you. I mean, the larger the event, the less spaces are available for those types of events.
Yes, and you might have overflow.
Right.
You might have 500 people coming, but 1,000 show up. Are you going to have enough room? Or even 750? Are you going to have enough room, chairs, space to be able to have that in the same room without opening up?
Yeah. And that brings up a good point too, because when you
air walls,
if you do have the possibility that your size could grow greatly, then you need to take that into account when you're looking for space.
Make sure
you need to
that
have
other
that
room is
flex
available.
space as well, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes people are marketing and it just, all this is going out and they think, well, we think we're going to have 500. Well, maybe they don't get anywhere near that, but
Right.
maybe they totally surpass the number.
It happens all the time.
They're not going to then want to say, well, darn, we're not going to let these people in. They're going to come to you and say, okay, well, we need more space, right? So you need to know if you're putting on your own event or if you're putting on an event for somebody else, how realistic is it that that number could grow? Because if it's less, we can deal with less.
You just remove the chairs, space it out.
You can make it look totally fine with less people. But more people, there's only so much space in your space, especially if you have it set up a certain way.
Right, because they're not going to want to be on top of each other either.
Well, and you can only get so much space in there. I mean, even if you maxed out at a certain
Fire
number.
marshal will be coming.
Yeah, so there's only so much that each space can hold. So you need to know whether you're putting on your own or whether you're working with a client. How realistic is it that this number is a number we're actually going to stick with versus what's the possibility that we could actually go up and what could that look like, right?
And
now,
if it's not your first event, you might have a better idea or understanding
of how that would work.
How the room's going to be.
Right.
And the overflow.
But that is very important because if you book this whole event, right, and you don't know the exact numbers because they market, you market for your events as it gets closer to your event. You've already booked the venue. You've already gotten the space. You've already signed the contracts. You've already gotten your layout. All those things are done. And then you're a week before the event. They're like, oh, well, we have, 1,000 people registered versus, the 500 or 750 you're expecting.
Right.
Well, do you have room for double the event or an extra 200 people or an extra 50 people even, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes you're like, okay, well, we can fit into this small space right here, but you've
maybe
got
100 more.
You've got no room for expansion, right?
And there is drop off.
There is, and if you have more people registered than what's coming, there's still going to be some drop off,
And that's a good thing.
and not that much if the number's that much. You know what I mean? So knowing that going in helps to alleviate challenges, struggles, stress that doesn't need to be there by thinking about that on the front end before you actually even get in to the booking. So after we know approximately how many people are going to be there, it's what type of setup now are you wanting, right?
Yes. Because some places have booths inside the ballroom, or you can have sales tables in the back. And just by having sales tables are already going to cut off a lot of seating.
Yep. And you start with the most simplistic thing first. How do you want the people to sit, right? Because most of the time they're not going to stand. Unless it's a cocktail hour, then that's different. But most everything else, expos, a lot of times there's walking. There could be sitting, if you have the main stage in the expo. So there's a lot of walking in that too.
And
but
breakout
most of
rooms.
the time there's going to be butts in seats, right?
Yes.
So you need to have a seat per person that's going to be there. And then it's like, how is that going to be laid out? Again, are we doing theater? Are we doing classroom? Are we doing rounds? Are we doing a combination? Sometimes
cocktail tables.
Yep. Sometimes
talls.
you could do a variation of that. Maybe you have VIP and they're up front and they get the classroom, and then you've got the more fill-in that's a general and they're more theater style.
Right.
That's however you want your event set up, but you've got to know because theater takes the least amount of space. Then you have classroom, and then you have your rounds. You got a big
Takes
round
up a
table.
lot of room.
It's a lot of space,
What,
and you got to
10
be
per
on
table?
Yeah,
If
8
that-
to 10, depending on the size and how crowded you want it. So
Because you need the aisles open to be able to walk through.
right, and you've only got your space. So
That's it.
you need to know ahead of time before you start trying to put yourself into something that's not going to work already, knowing these are the things that we're wanting. These are the amount of people we're going to have. This is the setup and style we're wanting.
Ceilings
Because
are high enough.
all those things come into play. Then the other thing is, like you were saying a second ago, is what type of stage are we having? Because that takes another section.
Are you
What
gonna be
type
small or
of
large?
audio visual? Are we going to be recording the event? Because again, that takes space. Are there going to be tables in the back or on the sides for maybe sponsors or
Right.
for sales
Rear
or
projection or front projection.
Yep.
Because if you're doing
That
rear
eats up the room.
projection, you're going to lose 15 to 20 feet already. just that fast.
And when you're working with venues, their job is to sell you the space that they have, right? Their job is not to look out and make sure that you've gone through all these points and that you know what you're getting yourself into. Their job is, ooh, someone has an event, they want to have it, they can fit in this space, sure, throw them in there, right? It's your job to make sure, whoa, wait.
No,
so
you need pictures and
you also
other
need to be
people
like,
to check it out.
We are doing we're doing rounds, we're doing, a stage of a certain size. We need risers in the front and in the back for video.
We need a diagram for
sales tables. The diagram is helpful, but on the phone, when you're talking to these venues, you've got to know what you need. What are your bare minimums, your non-negotiables that you're working with when you're working with a venue? Because when you pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm having an event and I need space for 250 people, they're like, oh, great, we've got the space. But if you say, I'm having an event on these dates and I need space for 250 people, classroom style, plus a riser, plus tables, plus I need extra space. Maybe you're doing an exercise, right? I mean, we've worked with a lot of people who do exercise. So it's not just about the space that you have. You need space outside of the tables and the chairs to be able to do other activities.
Even just the network.
Right. So, and then sometimes there's space out front that you can do that too. And a lot of times you still want it in the room, so all the energy stays in there, in that space that you're working
Hypnosis,
with.
people laying on the floor,
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have space for people to lay down, right?
Yeah.
So you've gotta know what your event is and what type of setup you're working with and what type of space that you need, so that when you are working towards getting a venue, you already know. It's not just, you're not just someone, oh, I just need this. Okay, well, great, we've got that, right?
Nope.
But nope, that's not gonna work because I need it for this and this and this. And that is your job when you're the event planner or you're the event production or you're putting on your own events to know your needs, right?
Yes, like you might need a larger stage. You might need to make changes. Do you have that space to be able to do that? Plus have your projectors and screens and everything. You're gonna need that space. More is always better.
More is better. More space is better, right?
Yes.
And
that's what I meant, more space.
More, but so is like, bells and whistles make the experience. We talk about all the time. An event is an experience. So it's not about bare minimum. It's not like, well, we can fit one screen in here, front projection, and you can have a tiny little stage, but don't walk this way because you'll fall off.
Don't ever
and don't
do
go
it.
this way. And
just don't do it. No.
And your stage design isn't going to be there because it's not big enough. It's not the look and the feel. So again, remember, every time you're putting together an event is an experience. What experience are you creating in this event? And you got to know your space that you need to be able to have that. And that's by getting clear on the front end for each event that you're working on, all of these different things that we're going through today, so that you can be concise and clear. So then when you do go the next step, which is looking for venues, you have information to work with.
Right. Even monitors are in front of the stage. That takes room also. It takes away from your walk space. So that means your tables need to be a little further back from the stage. So things like that also.
And then nowadays, there's so many events that are virtual and live. It's like that hybrid event that you have to have space for all that equipment
the camera,
as well.
The equipment, the tables.
Yeah. And so, for a while we were just doing virtual events. Before that it was all live events. Now it's like, well, people have gotten used to doing events at their house. It's like, well, you're having a live event.
Yes.
Well, I want to have the virtual experience of that, right? So then that's another thing that takes up more room in your room though too, because maybe you're doing a 1-camera shoot, maybe you're doing a 3-camera shoot. You need to have lights, you need to have all these other things. And again, what does that do? That takes up space, right? And so if you don't know what your needs and requirements are on the front end, you should not be reaching out to venues until you're clear on everything that we're talking about here, because if not, you're just wasting your time and their time.
Correct.
Right? Because then it's like, well, I have this space, and you're like, well, no, because you weren't clear and concise with what you needed up front, and so they thought you needed this, but you actually need this, and so then you're going back and forth, come to find out it's not even going to be big enough for you anyways.
Right. You need to double check all your stats and everything else, because last minute things happen and changes, and the minute you want to make that change, it won't work.
And it helps to have a step-by-step for each event that you're doing, your checklist of like, okay, question number 1, indoor or outdoor, right? Question number 2, what type of event is it? Question number 3, how many people are we expecting, and what could be the surplus of people, right? And then what is our setup? What is that going to look like? What type of layout are we doing in the room as far as, theater, classroom, rounds, cocktail, high boys, all those kind of things that you have. Then what kind of staging do we need?
Yes.
What type of lighting do we need? What type of risers do we need for any camera? So what type of tables do we want in the back for people to meet and mingle? Or maybe you're doing sales, or maybe you're selling, books, or you have all these different things that you need to know.
Tables all over the room for your books.
Now that is for a more conference style event. If you're doing trade shows, then you need to know.
It's not going to be too many seats. It's more walking.
Unless you have that main stage. So how many booths are you planning on getting into your space?
Inside of the room or outside the room?
And how many are you doing, and how much space do each of those get, right? Because then it's just math. It's like, okay, you're doing 100 at a 10 by 10, great. Or are you doing, 8 by 10s, and the corners are the premier spot where they get bigger.
Yep.
Or, you have all these, but you gotta know what you're working with. If you're having 20, it's different than 100. 100 is different than 1,000.
Right.
I mean, how much space? Because then again, you're able to go and know, okay, well, we have this many amount of booths. This is what we need. This is the size of them. Are you doing 5 by 5s? I mean, they're going to be itty titty mini little booths, or are you going to do bigger ones?
Yes.
Because again, you can get more 5 by 5s than you can 10 by 10s, right? And you need to know. And
when it comes back to staging, they might even have sets that's going to be on the stage, and they'll take more space than they don't need. You're going to need more staging just to make it even wider, because that area, you're going to have to stay clear of it. Yep. Okay, so I think we've hammered that out.
Yes. The next thing that you have to know is, are you doing one room, one space? Are you going to have breakouts, right? And what I mean by a breakout is maybe you have a main room, right? The main stage where everybody is going to. But then you have these individual breakout rooms where people, maybe they're at a certain time, people can choose the room they want to go to learn about a specific topic.
They'll be on the schedule
a specific subject. Yep. And so you want those rooms close to your main room.
Yeah, not a mile away.
Completely down the way.
Close as possible.
You want it close, and then you want to be able to know how many of those you need too, because now you need this space plus these spaces. So then you got to go back to your questions at the beginning of, okay, what's the layout going to be in those breakout rooms?
Right.
What is the setup going to be?
What's the AV going to be?
What type of space do we need? How many people are we looking at in each of these breakouts, right? Because then from there you can move, okay, so I need 5 breakouts, and I need them each to have, we're having a 250 person event. I need at least 50 people to fit in here and go from there. Right now, that's one way of looking at those breakouts. But again, you've got to know, do you need breakouts? Is that something you know? If you don't, then that's not something. But if you do, if you're having like the main stage and then other things going on in rooms around it, you need to know how many rooms, how much space, what's the setup. You got to know that up front.
You got to ask up front, because you could just have your ballroom you want in negotiations, but a week or two later, you figured out you needed ballrooms. You needed breakout rooms, and they're not available.
And that's your job, though. That's your job to anticipate, ask the questions that maybe they're not telling you, because you are the expert, right?
Yes.
And if this is your event and you're putting on your own event, then these are things that you need to get clear on before you put on your own event, too.
Do you even have extra breakout rooms? Because if you have 5, but more people showed up and you need more, then do you have an extra 2?
Or is that an option or not? Or is there an option to be able to make each of those breakout rooms hold more people? Because a lot of times you only have so many speakers or so many topics or so many subjects that are going to be covered in those breakouts. So is there a way to expand? Because if your main room expands, right? If you go from the 500 to 750, well, now you have 250 extra people that need to go into these breakouts if you're doing that.
Yes.
And then that's another thought too. So it's not just the main room. If you have other things going on in other rooms, then you've got to go through the whole list that we just went through for the main room, for the separate rooms as well.
Yes, because you can make those breakout rooms a little bigger.
Yep. Another thing that you might have breakouts for, or other things to think of, are meals. Sometimes you're providing breakfast. Sometimes you're providing lunches, dinners, cocktails. Where are those things taking place? Normally they're not taking place in the main room unless it's a working lunch, right? So sometimes, you're like, okay, during this time you're going to go grab your lunch and everyone's going to come back, and then we're going to continue the event. There's going to be something going on during that time. hence the working lunch.
Yes.
If it's not that, then you need to have a separate place if you're providing the food
for people to eat.
And that's something else you need to know. Are you doing that? Is that something you're going to have in your F&B that you're working on? If it's not, that's okay too.
Right.
Then that brings up another conversation we'll have, is like what's around it.
Yes.
And right now we're working on, what rooms you need. So that is something to think of, is, are you providing meals? Which meals are you providing on which days? Is it for everybody? Is it just for VIPs?
Just for VIPs? Yes.
Is it for, is it general, everyone gets it with their ticket? How is that working?
What they've been having lately is a cashier and the tables, and lunch is already made.
Right.
And then you just sit wherever you want to sit, anywhere.
And that would be something then that you're not responsible for. The hotel
but you can request
is
it.
providing, and they'll have the space for that.
They'll make their money off of it.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't really have to pay much for that.
And there's so many different ways that you can, there's nothing set in stone and crystal clear about events. There is, and that's something that's fun
Everything
about
is workable.
And every event is different. Even if you've had the event at the same time, the same kind of event all the time, it's still different. It's still unique. It's still because the venue is different, and the people you're working with are different, and maybe your requirements are a little different, or you're changing it up, or maybe you're evolving the event. And
your job is to evolve the event, for sure, if you're going to have it every year.
Yeah,
Just
you don't want it to stay the same.
No, make some changes.
You want to change it, evolve it, make it current, make it something that someone that came 5 years ago and comes today and like, wow, you know what?
This is a great different experience.
This is a totally different experience because of this, this, and this, right?
Yep.
So again, event equals experience. When you're putting on an event, you are putting on an experience. What do you want your attendees to experience? What do you want people who are coming through that door? How do you want them to feel? How do you want them to talk about your event? What do you want their takeaway to be? When they walk away, they say, what? Right? What is it you want them saying about your event? And then create that so that you get more of what you want.
It's moldable.
Yep. And then we talked about briefly the cocktail hour. Normally
more party atmosphere.
Yeah, a lot of times with that, you've got your high boys, you've got a lot of walking. Sometimes there are tables, around that too.
Yeah, some snacks.
For your cocktail, are you providing that? Is that something you're wanting? If so, then you need to talk about where is that happening? How much space do you need? And what is the layout you're wanting for that too?
Don't attempt to do it in your main ballroom either.
No.
You don't want them tearing down and setting up because they're going to charge you for that.
It needs to be in a separate room. That way, as soon as one is done, the flow goes right into the next one, right? It's not, everyone, we're going to wait an hour while we reset up and change this over.
No.
Stay out here, talk and meet and mingle, and then you need to have it set up so that your event flows from one into the next, into the next. Whether that's, we're outside, you're registering everybody. Now here is the place where you can go have your breakfast or your coffees or your teas. Doors open, they go inside. We go to breaks. Okay, now it's lunchtime. Let's go over here for that. Now we're back in the room. Now we're over here for cocktail hour.
Transitions.
It needs to be a flow.
Yes.
And that, again, comes from making sure that you have all of your bases covered ahead of time. Events flow because you put the work in before the event even became anything because you knew what you were looking for.
Schedule. Stay on schedule.
And then, like we talked about a minute ago, booths, that's a different setup. Are you going to have a stage? Are you going to have certain booths? How many booths are you having? What is the look and feel of that as well? Because those are all different things. Now, again, you could have a little bit of a hybrid where maybe you're having your event in like a conference or ballroom, right? And then you do have a component where you have like sponsors who paid to have booths. So maybe you're not doing like a whole trade show setup, but you have a different section, a different room, a different area where sponsors can have booths or tables, and that's a setup too.
And that could be mostly is outside of the main ballroom.
It could be in a separate room too.
So it's just in a hallway. Or
it could be in the hallway. It could be.
But remember, you might have to pay for that extra room, so it's better off having it outside the room.
Yeah, and you never want to assume that you can use that corridor space out front of your room for registration, for tables, for anything to be set up out there.
And that's in negotiations right away.
Yeah. And because if you don't say, well, we need a place for registration, well, they're not going to give you one, right? So again, you've got to make sure that these are all things that you have to talk about ahead of the event.
Yes.
And if you are wanting sponsors or people to be out front, you have your doors and then you have that corridor, that hallway. If you want that, you're going to have to make sure that the venue knows that. And one, it's okay with them. Two, they don't have other things going out that they already sold the space.
Yep.
Are they going to charge you extra for the space?
Yes. Are they going to set up electricity for everybody?
Do they not want you in the halls? They want you in a separate room so they have a clear walkway. It depends on how big the hallways are. Some are really small and there's not room for, tables on either side and still a nice flow to go through.
Yes.
Again, this is all conversation to have. It's all things that you need to be thinking of before you pick up the phone to start reaching out to venues. Because if you're reaching out to venues and you're talking to them and you don't have any of this stuff answered for yourself,
it's going to be hard for you.
And you're not going to be able to get through what you need. And so then they're going to start telling you what you need, right? And you've got to be clear.
It might not be what you want.
Right. And so when you're clear on the front end of these are my requirements, these are my non-negotiables, these are the things I need, it makes it much easier to find a venue or to say that venue is not going to work. They're like, we only have this. They're going, okay, not going to work. Thank you so much. Awesome. You move on, right? It's not well, maybe we could possibly. And that's also why you want to book your events out in advance because then you have more space,
6
you have
months
more
or more.
availability, you have more flexibility to be able to say, that doesn't fit my non-negotiable, that doesn't fit my requirements, I'm going to keep looking, right?
Yes.
And you're not then under the clock of like, oh my gosh, we got to find a venue, whatever we can take is fine, let's just get it.
And maybe they have another hotel that might fit also.
Right. And sometimes they do. That's why when you're clear on what you need, people can help you find it, right?
Yes.
It's when you don't know and you're just kind of come and see, come saw, whatever comes my way, that's what I'm going to get. That's when you start having a disastrous event before the event even starts.
Pillars,
right? And there's enough challenges of things that can go wrong with an event, even when you've done everything you need to do, that you don't want to set yourself up to have those challenges when you can alleviate them on the front
end. That's what the pictures and knowing that room before you get in there.
Yep. Okay. Then another thing that a lot of people don't think about, and I have all of them noted here because they're very important, is what level is this meeting space on?
Are you in a basement?
Are you in the parking garage? Are you in a tent that you didn't know you're going to be in? Are you?
Both happened to us.
Very rude awakenings on both of those.
Yes.
Are you just so far entrenched? I mean, some of these meeting spaces
are a mile away.
It's like a maze to find the space.
Yes.
And you do not want your attendees
getting
showing
lost.
up and having to follow a map, a maze. You need to have someone at every corner to help them get where they need to go.
You can have 20 signs and it won't help.
And then you have to have actual people because people don't read signs. They don't look and they keep walking and they get lost and then everyone's late and then they're complaining and it sets the event off on the wrong foot.
Then you're off schedule because you waited for everybody to come in the room.
You need to know, where is this space? It isn't easily accessible. Like you take this door, you go up this elevator, down this escalator, and it's there, right?
Yes.
Not that you need to go 5 floors down, go down the hall 100 yards, turn a right, take another elevator up, then go down, then circle around, climb up the stairwell, and then there's your event. Who's going to find that?
It's a freaking workout.
Right? And yet, again, they will sell you that space.
Got your 1,000 steps in.
Because you didn't ask, right? I mean, we used to have events where we would stay in the hotel, right? We would pack everything that we needed for the day because there was no getting back to the hotel room. Like it wasn't, even though it was in the same space. It was so far away that you take your comfy shoes to walk there. You put your nice shoes, that are not practical on once you get there because they look good, but they're not walking shoes by any means. And then you have whatever you might need, your computers, your water, your snacks, your everything you can think of, your makeup if you wanted to touch it, like everything. Because there's no going back, right? Anything you need, because it takes a good 45 minutes to just get there. Well, that's not going to happen. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have 45 minutes to walk one way and walk it.
These places are getting bigger,
and that's at a good pace. They are.
Bigger.
And so, when you book early, you can book better, right? Book early, book better. Make the choices that you are going to make that are going to be good for you, not being stuck in some corner somewhere because that's the only space that's available that'll fit your needs, right? So again, book early, book better.
Yes.
Take the time, know what you're looking for, and move forward that way. The other thing is, we talked about, are there
stairs? Are there elevators? How are you going to get there?
Right?
Yes.
And it's not just, okay, well, it's easily accessible.
Yeah.
How? How is it easily accessible?
You need to know.
Where are you getting? And if they cannot easily explain it to you, it's not easily accessible, right? If they can't say, oh, well, you come out you go in the east doors over here, and then you take the first, escalator or elevator up to the third level, and you're right there. Awesome. Okay, that's doable.
They're like, well, you might have to make a right there, or the one elevator will take you up here.
Or the one I love. There's lots of ways to get to it.
That's the main one.
That means there's lots of ways to get lost, is what that means. Like, if there's lots of ways to get to it and you can't give me one, wait, okay, either you don't know your space well, or it's going to sound like a whole list of directions to get there. Cluster. Find something else.
Yes.
Okay. Another one is, if you're doing a local event and most people are going to be driving to the event, is there ample parking? Not every venue space has a parking garage or a parking lot, or, so then you're looking for street parking, or, these ones that are downtown.
Oh, it's the worst.
In some bigger cities, there's not a lot of parking space. And so if your people are having to drive around and around and around and around to find something, it's going to irritate them. It's going to aggravate them. They're going to show up late because they don't leave early enough for that.
Also.
Yeah, parking vouchers are good.
Yes,
but again, is there ample space? And it's not just ample space for your people. Think about other things could be going on at the same venue as you. So they're like, oh yeah, there's plenty of parking space for your amount. Okay, well, we're not just looking at our event, right? Because there's other normally events going on or other things going on. Is there enough parking for all those things? And if not, that's a hurdle and an obstacle that a lot of times is not worth it.
Yeah, people won't even come back after the first day.
No, if it was hard for them to get where they needed to go on the first, they're not coming back on the second. They're not going to deal with it. They're not going to go through the maze. They're not going to try to find parking. Now, if you're having a completely virtual event, that doesn't matter, right? Yeah. But again, most of the time now we're back to live events or hybrid events. So these are the questions we got to start asking again. Where can we park? And if there's not ample parking, probably should move it on.
Yes. Now, if people are flying in, you must have a hotel near an airport.
Or a venue.
Don't be 45 minutes away from the airport, because nobody's going to want to take the drive or Uber or the cab to spend all that money to get there.
And it's time, right? It's time, it's money, it's efficiency.
Rush hour.
And sometimes something could be a 45-minute drive depending on the time of day. In the morning, it's an hour and a half. In the evening, it's an hour and a half. During lunch, it could be. So the only time it's a 45-minute drive is, between off-peak hours in the morning or the afternoon. And again, it's another reason that people will say, you know what? I have to fly in. I need to find a place. Look at that. It's way over here. It's not worth having to do all these extra steps to get there.
Don't have it right next to the airport either.
Like
right there, because you'll hear the planes flying by. It's crowded.
There's a happy medium. Like, you don't want it necessarily right there on airport
10,
property.
15 minutes is good.
But a nice drive that it's just you hop in, you get there.
You're there quickly.
They're able to go through and check their emails and make a phone call, and you're there. Great.
Yes.
Okay? Yep. Like, that's a type of distance that you're looking for, not something where it's like so far over here. But again, that comes back to knowing, are you doing a local event where people are going to drive? Are you doing a fly-in event where most people are going to be flying in because they're not local to where this event is happening? You need to know those things, because then that's going to help you when you're looking for your space to make sure, and sometimes there's more than one airport around too. So what is the airport of choice that most people are going to be coming to, and that's the distance you want to be working from, right? If you go to Dallas, there's 2 different airports that you're working with. Well, some people might be coming into this one, some might be coming into this one. So where is it in connection, in conjunction to those 2? Is it a distance? Because they might be going to both. They can decide. So you want to make sure, okay, well, there's 2 in this area, so we need to make sure it's centrally located between both of those. Yeah. All right. What we talked about a second ago was registration, but it's often overlooked. I mean, if you have a 50-person event, registration looks much different than if you have 1,000 person event or a 500 person event or even 200. It's different in the amount of time that you need, the amount of space that you need, and how your flow is going to work. Because once people register, then the event, normally the doors don't open yet.
Yep,
so
doors won't open for an hour.
Where are they going?
Is there enough space for everybody?
For them to mingle out front. Because again, you don't want to just have the door wide open. People can walk in. Because in the video, it's like, well, they can, there's
people
plenty
do it
of
all
room
the time.
for people to come, register, and go into the event. Well, that's what we're wanting, right? We're wanting to,
grand entrance.
Create an experience. And what creates an experience? The energy of everyone going into the room at the same time, because you can have the music on and you can have everything ready and you can welcome
showing
them.
Everybody coming in.
And you can have everyone there welcome them and being excited and
high fives.
That's how you start the event each and every day off, right? And from breaks
it's
and
about that energy.
From your lunches and all, you want that. So your venue might not be thinking that. They're like, well, yeah, you can have a table out here, register, and then there's plenty of people who go inside and wait. Well, that's not what we're looking for. We want to be able to register and have enough space in the hall or the corridor or wherever they're at to mingle and hang out while more people are registering, because we're not opening the doors until right before the event.
Yep.
Like right before.
15.
Yeah. Okay, and then maybe you're having your general registration and then you're having your VIP registration. Is that something you're doing? If so, you need enough space in between so that there's a distinction between that. People can form lines, they can wait. Again, it all takes space.
Is that VIP first?
Yeah, and again, that's all space. And those are, even though you're looking for a meeting space that can hold this, you've got to think about all these other things that come along with having an event that aren't a lot of times thought of.
Takes a list.
Because it's important to your whole, what you're doing. All right. And I think the last one is it close to the bathrooms? And
because you're running.
Are there enough bathrooms that people can get in and out
quickly?
Or are there a couple different ones within a close proximity? Because bathrooms are a big thing, right?
Yes.
People are going to use them. People are going to come and go. And if they get up in the middle of the event and walk out, it should be a quick walk. They do their business and come back, right?
Yes.
When you go on breaks and you're like, okay, everyone's
going to one bathroom.
Everyone is opening and going to the bathroom.
And it's going to take 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get them back in the room.
If there's not enough bathrooms with enough space within a close proximity to where you are. So that's another thing you got to look at is, where are the bathrooms in conjunction to where your event is going to be taking place, and are there enough of them that people can come in and come up. If you're having 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, that's one thing. If you're having 500, 1,000, that's different. Everyone's going to need to do their business, right?
They all need to go at once.
And everybody, they all go at once because that's the time you break, right? And so that's something to think of too, is how close is it to the bathrooms? How much space is in there in the bathrooms for people to be able to come and go?
That's right.
So that it's not holding up your event. Remember we talked about flow?
Yes.
Bathrooms are part of that flow. And because if you say we're going to be back and people are still waiting in line to use the bathroom, well, you're stopping or holding up, or you're stalling. Let's do some Q&A. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it's just,
some people don't care, so you're missing the information.
Right. And that, again, you want the experience. Event equals experience. We want to create the best possible experience. And it comes from what we've talked about here, making sure that before you even start looking for venue space, you know what you're looking for, you have your information, you have your non-negotiables, and then you can go to the venue and start talking because you know what you're looking for. Anything else you want to add on that one?
And else, just stick to your guidelines. Just stick to it.
And you can put together an Excel spreadsheet. You can put together, a Word document or a Google Doc that has your checklist. So that way, for each event, you're going through each of these components and making sure that you're addressing each of them. You have your one sheet, right? And then when you're going to venues and you're starting to look, then you have your information to be able to take it from there.
It's going to make you comfortable also.
And it's going to make you
take a deep breath.
And you're going to be the expert because you know what you're doing.
You know what you want.
And whether you're putting on your own event, you know what you want, or whether you are the person planning the event for somebody else, again.
You know what they want.
Right. And the same thing when it comes to AV. Like a lot of these things are important for AV too, because you need to know how much space you have. You need to know what your requirements are, all those types of things to be able to make sure you have the right equipment. So event space, while it can seem very small, and like, I just need some space for X. You now know that there's a lot that goes into what do you need when it comes to looking at event space for your next event. And you've got to make sure that you have all these questions answered before you start looking at the event.
Just start checking them off.
And that way you go in prepared, you go in knowing what you need, you go in, that way the venue knows what you need and you're not wasting your time or anyone else's time. You're able to get in, get your information and start looking, and that way you can start comparing the venues that are actually going to work and fit your needs versus having to go through all this stuff that's not even going to fit.
Correct.
Alrighty, I think we've
covered everything.
Covered a lot today.
Yeah.
And again, we come every week and give you more information all about events, event planning, event production, and we cover a specific topic each time. And
each week
we attempt to go into details to give you more insights and experience and understanding of each particular topic. So we appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.